Saudi Arabia has long been associated with sand, sun, and oil, but there's another story unfolding beneath its surface. Rumors have circulated that the kingdom is pumping millions of gallons of water underground. At first, it sounded like a conspiracy. Why would a desert nation known for its water scarcity bury such a precious resource beneath the sand? But recent developments suggest it's not just a rumor, it's real. And it's part of a much larger, fascinating transformation in how Saudi Arabia manages its most precious and limited resource, water. Let's start with the obvious. Saudi Arabia is one of the driest countries on Earth. It has no natural rivers, very few lakes, and receives a meager amount of rainfall each year. On average, just about 100 millimeters, or 4 inches. And yet, the country has managed to develop an extensive, sophisticated water infrastructure, something most people would assume is impossible in such an arid environment. Despite these harsh natural conditions, Saudi Arabia has built an underground water distribution system that rivals the infrastructure of water-rich nations. It might sound unbelievable, but they've made it work. Since 2021, the kingdom has constructed a staggering 522 dams across the country. These dams collect and store rainwater and seasonal floodwaters, which are rare but not non-existent in Saudi Arabia. Most of this water is captured from wadis, dry riverbeds that temporarily come alive during flash floods or short bursts of heavy rain. Though it may seem like a few inches of rain wouldn't make much of a difference, these dams have proven surprisingly effective. Saudi Arabia's hot climate means water evaporates quickly when exposed to the surface. Storing it in dams and distributing it quickly helps avoid massive losses to heat. These 522 dams have a combined storage capacity of roughly 650 billion gallons. One of the most significant is the Hali Dam, located near the city of Taif in the Makkah province. Completed in 2009, it can hold nearly 250 million cubic meters of water. It plays a critical role in flood control, irrigation, and most notably, recharging underground aquifers. In fact, the Makkah region alone has 60 dams that can store over 230 billion gallons of water. These reservoirs are a vital part of Saudi Arabia's strategy, but they aren't the country's main source of water. That distinction goes to something hidden from view: groundwater. Saudi Arabia may not have rivers, but it does have something equally valuable: massive underground aquifers. These aquifers contain approximately 26 trillion gallons of water, making them one of the largest known groundwater reserves in the world. But here's the catch. Not all of this water is renewable. Only around 739 billion gallons per year can be replenished naturally through rainfall. That's less than 3% of the total reserves. The rest is what scientists refer to as fossil water, ancient water that was trapped underground thousands, even millions, of years ago during a time when the Arabian Peninsula was lush and green. Back then, regular rainfall allowed rivers to flow and wetlands to form. Over time, this water seeped into the earth, becoming part of deep, underground reservoirs. Today, Saudi Arabia is tapping into this fossil water to meet growing demand. The water is pumped to cities, industries, and farmlands across the country. But it's a one-way trip. Once it's used, it's gone for good. There's no natural process replenishing these ancient aquifers. That creates a serious problem. Saudi Arabia's water consumption far exceeds the rate at which it can safely replenish supplies. The country uses water for drinking, sanitation, agriculture, and even luxury purposes, like maintaining green lawns and cleaning cars. And with a growing population and expanding urban centers, that demand is only increasing. The imbalance is striking. Relying on fossil water is like withdrawing money from a bank account without ever depositing more. Eventually, the account runs dry. And if Saudi Arabia's underground water reserves are depleted, the consequences could be dire. To help close the gap, the kingdom has turned to wastewater treatment. As of 2019, there were 99 facilities that treated about 1.3 billion gallons of wastewater daily. These plants purify used water for reuse in agriculture, landscaping, and some industrial processes. The amount of treated water is growing annually, but it still falls short of solving the larger water crisis. Faced with a future of uncertainty, Saudi Arabia's engineers came up with a bold solution: create their own river. Since the country lacks rivers and permanent surface water, officials look to the next best option, the sea. With coastlines along both the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf, Saudi Arabia began pumping seawater inland, where it would be desalinated and distributed through a colossal pipeline system. This system now stretches more than 8,700 miles, longer than the Nile River, the world's longest natural river. But unlike the Nile, Saudi Arabia's river isn't visible. It runs underground. This network, often called Saudi Arabia's Invisible River, is one of the most ambitious water transport systems ever built. Most of it lies beneath the desert sands, protecting the water from heat and evaporation, two critical challenges in a region where temperatures can soar above 50 degrees Celsius, 122 degrees Fahrenheit. The older water network in Saudi Arabia, which spans more than 78,000 miles, is mostly above ground or shallowly buried. These pipes are more exposed to damage and evaporation. In contrast, the new Red Sea and Gulf pipeline systems are deeply buried and far more durable. They were also incredibly difficult to build. To lay the pipelines, engineers had to blast through the Hijaz Mountains, cutting through granite and limestone using tunnel boring machines and controlled explosions. Some pipes are over 2 meters wide and had to be precisely aligned to maintain water pressure and flow. In the desert interior, construction crews worked under extreme conditions. Intense heat, shifting sand dunes, and sudden flash floods all threatened progress. Work was often carried out during cooler nighttime hours to avoid dangerous daytime temperatures. But why go through all this trouble to pump seawater inland? Because that seawater is transformed into freshwater through a process called desalination. Desalination removes salt and impurities from seawater, making it safe for drinking, cooking, and irrigation. It's a game changer for countries like Saudi Arabia that are surrounded by ocean but lack fresh water. However, desalination isn't cheap or simple. It's highly energy intensive, often relying on fossil fuels. This makes desalinated water 3 to 10 times more expensive than water from natural sources. And there are environmental risks too, mainly the disposal of brine, the salty byproduct. If not handled properly, brine can seriously damage marine ecosystems. Still, Saudi Arabia has embraced desalination more aggressively than any other nation. In the 1980s, the country had limited capacity, but by 2011, it operated 30 desalination plants. That number grew to 33 by 2023 and 43 plants by 2024. The crown jewel of this infrastructure is the Ras Al Khair desalination plant on the country's eastern coast, costing a massive $7.2 billion to build. It holds the Guinness World Record as the largest desalination plant on Earth. It produces nearly 800 million gallons of water per day, enough to support millions of people and major industries. Another significant plant is located in Jubail, producing over 200 million gallons daily. When compared globally, Saudi Arabia's desalination capacity is unmatched. Countries like Israel, Australia, and the UAE are also advancing in this area, but none have scaled operations quite like the kingdom. But Saudi Arabia isn't stopping there. The government has launched an ambitious greening initiative to fight back against desertification. As part of its environmental vision, the kingdom plans to plant 10 billion trees and restore vast areas of land. The aim is to protect 30% of its territory, reintroducing vegetation and creating a more balanced ecosystem. This effort will help reduce sandstorms, improve air quality, and, most importantly, enhance rainfall infiltration, which could indirectly aid groundwater recharge. In short, Saudi Arabia is not just surviving in its harsh desert environment, it's reshaping it. From ancient aquifers and fossil water to the world's largest desalination plants and an 8,700-mile underground waterway, the country has engineered its way out of what should have been a permanent water crisis. But challenges remain. Desalination's high cost, environmental impact, and dependence on fossil fuels are real concerns. The kingdom's long-term success will depend on balancing innovation with sustainability. Still, one thing is clear. When nature didn't provide water, Saudi Arabia created it. In a region where water is the ultimate lifeblood, a bold new chapter is unfolding in the heart of Central Asia. Imagine a land where the promise of irrigation can transform barren landscapes into thriving agricultural fields. Yet every drop of water holds the key to prosperity and conflict. This is the story of Afghanistan's ambitious mega-project, the construction of the Kash-Tepa Canal, an artificial waterway designed to divert life-giving water from one of Asia's most critical rivers, the Amu Darya. For centuries, the Amu Darya River has been a silent witness to the rise and fall of empires, nourishing civilizations that flourished along its banks. Historically, its waters not only quenched thirst, but also powered agriculture and trade across Central Asia. In the mid-20th century, visionary Afghan leaders, inspired by progressive ideas, began contemplating a transformation, a plan to harness and redirect this vital resource. Among these early pioneers was Muhammad Khan, whose progressive outlook sowed the seeds for what would eventually become the Kash-Tepa Canal project. Fast forward to March 2022, a turning point in Afghanistan's long struggle with water scarcity and economic instability. Against a backdrop of droughts and mounting unemployment, Afghan officials unveiled a project that would change the nation's destiny. The Kash-Tepa Canal was not just an infrastructure endeavor, it was a lifeline. With construction commencing swiftly, the canal project aimed to divert water from the mighty Amu Darya, an artery shared by 4 nations, and channel it into the parched northern provinces of Afghanistan. The Amu Darya, stretching over 1,490 miles, with a watershed covering 206,000 square miles, is no ordinary river. Annually, it discharges an average of 25 trillion gallons of water, a figure that underscores its significance in a region where every drop counts. Historically, downstream countries, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, have depended on its waters under agreements forged during the Soviet era. According to Protocol 566 of 1987, Uzbekistan was allocated 48.2% of the river's flow, roughly 7.8 trillion gallons per year. Tajikistan received 15.4%, equating to 2.5 trillion gallons. Turkmenistan was assigned 35.5%, around 5.8 trillion gallons, while Kyrgyzstan received a modest 6%, or 0.1 trillion gallons. Notably, Afghanistan, a nation long embroiled in internal crises, was left without an official share. Yet, in a dramatic reversal of fortunes, Afghanistan has set its sights on capturing a portion of this elusive resource. The Kash-Tepa Canal project is being executed at an unprecedented pace. In its initial phase, a 67-mile-long section was completed in just 18 months, surpassing the original 24-month schedule. This first stage cost approximately 8.2 billion Afghanis, roughly $94 million, a figure that represents a significant 8% of Afghanistan's domestic revenue collected in the first 8 months of 2022. Today, more than 61% of the entire project is finished, with plans to extend the canal to a total length of 177 miles. The scale of this endeavor is staggering. Over 200 subcontractors, around 5,500 workers, and 3,300 pieces of heavy equipment are operating around the clock. Every day, up to 35 million cubic feet of soil is removed, bridges are constructed, and underground irrigation pipelines are integrated into the design. With such rapid progress, the canal is on track to divert an estimated 2.6 trillion gallons of water from the Amu Darya every year. For Afghanistan, the Kash-Tepa Canal represents hope, a chance to revitalize its northern provinces. Once completed, the canal is projected to irrigate 1,360,000 acres of dry, abandoned lands, fostering agricultural development on a scale previously unseen in the region. The project is expected to generate up to 250,000 new jobs, alleviating chronic unemployment and stimulating economic growth. Moreover, with the recent full ban on opium poppy cultivation in April 2022, which saw opium production drop from over 6,000 tons to nearly zero, the canal's development is poised to encourage the growth of legal, sustainable crops such as wheat and corn. However, while Afghanistan's prospects brighten, the regional implications are profound. The Amu Darya is not merely a national resource. It is a shared lifeline for its downstream neighbors. In countries like Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, water from the Amu Darya is indispensable for agriculture, particularly for the cultivation of cotton and wheat. Uzbekistan, for instance, ranks among the top global cotton producers, with agriculture supporting nearly half of its workforce. The diversion of 2.6 trillion gallons of water could potentially reduce the combined water share for the primary users from 80% to a mere 65%, triggering a cascade of economic and environmental challenges. Environmental concerns add another layer of complexity. The Amu Darya's diminished flow has already contributed to the drying of the Aral Sea, a catastrophic ecological disaster with far-reaching consequences. As the river's volume decreases, vital wetland ecosystems and native fish species, such as the Amu Darya sturgeon, are placed at risk. The ongoing reduction in water flow also exacerbates desertification, as arid regions expand and toxic dust from eroded soils is carried by winds across vast distances, even reaching as far as Antarctica and Greenland. The timeline of the Kash-Tepa Canal project is marked by a series of remarkable milestones. What began as a visionary idea in the mid-20th century has, in less than 3 years, evolved into one of the most ambitious infrastructural endeavors in Central Asia. From the initial surveys and soil studies to the construction of bridges and the integration of underground irrigation systems, every phase of the project has been a race against time and resource constraints. Notably, the project's accelerated pace has not been without its challenges. In early 2023, a breach in the canal, resulting in the loss of 26 billion gallons of water, highlighted the risks of rapid construction without the benefit of robust, resource-intensive materials like concrete lining. Swift repairs were made, underscoring the urgency to complete the project despite inherent flaws. The geopolitical stakes are equally high. Under the Soviet-era Protocol 566, water distribution from the Amu Darya was meticulously apportioned. However, with Afghanistan's new unilateral move, the delicate balance of water sharing is at risk of being upended. While the project promises significant domestic benefits for Afghanistan, transforming arid lands into fertile fields and providing economic uplift, it simultaneously poses a grave threat to its downstream neighbors. For Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, the loss of even a fraction of the river's water could imperil their agricultural sectors, diminish export revenues, and ignite regional tensions over dwindling resources. The irony is stark. While the Kash-Tepa Canal is poised to herald a new era of agricultural revival for Afghanistan, it may also deepen the water crisis for nations that have long relied on the Amu Darya. In Uzbekistan, where cotton production is a cornerstone of the economy, reduced water availability could lead to lower yields, diminished export income, and widespread economic repercussions for millions of people. Similarly, in Turkmenistan, where water is critical not only for agriculture but also for sustaining livelihoods, the diversion of water threatens to exacerbate an already precarious situation. Within Afghanistan, the stakes are equally high. The nation's northern provinces, traditionally limited by sporadic rainfall and harsh climatic conditions, are on the cusp of a transformative agricultural revolution. The Kash-Tepa Canal is more than an infrastructure project. It is a strategic investment in the future. By providing a reliable water supply, the canal could enable the cultivation of fertile lands on an unprecedented scale, effectively turning vast swathes of barren desert into productive farmland. In doing so, it holds the promise of not only alleviating hunger and reducing unemployment, but also of fostering a sustainable agricultural economy that could propel Afghanistan into a new era of prosperity. As Afghanistan forges ahead with the Kash-Tepa Canal project, the eyes of the world watch with a mixture of hope and apprehension. On one hand, the canal represents a beacon of progress, a bold solution to the nation's long-standing challenges of drought, unemployment, and food insecurity. On the other hand, it serves as a potent reminder of the complex, interwoven nature of water politics in Central Asia, where the diversion of a single river can reshape entire economies and ecosystems. In this era of unprecedented environmental change and geopolitical flux, the Kash-Tepa Canal stands as both a testament to human ingenuity and a cautionary tale of the delicate balance between development and sustainability. As nations continue to navigate the intricate web of water rights and environmental stewardship, one thing remains clear. In a world where every drop of water is precious, the choices we make today will determine the fate of generations to come. The future of Afghanistan, and indeed of the entire region, hinges on our ability to manage nature's most vital resource wisely. Throughout history, deserts have both challenged and inspired human progress. Along ancient trade routes, such as the Silk Road, caravans braved shifting sands to exchange goods, ideas, and culture. Even so, deserts remained a persistent threat, capable of swallowing entire cities and forcing populations to relocate in search of fertile land. In modern-day China, deserts still pose significant challenges, yet they have also become the focus of one of the most ambitious environmental transformations in recent history. Over the past few decades, China has undertaken large-scale projects to halt and even reversed the spread of its deserts. The Gobi and Taklamakan, once considered impenetrable and uncontrollable, have begun to shrink in certain areas due to reforestation programs and innovative water management. At the same time, China's rapid industrialization has placed unprecedented demands on resources like sand and water, sparking further concerns for sustainability. China's deserts comprise a significant portion of its northern and western territories. Historically, nomadic communities coexisted with these arid lands, adapting their lives to seasonal weather patterns. However, as the 20th century brought industrial expansion, pressures on the environment grew. By the 1970s, the Gobi Desert alone was encroaching southward at an alarming pace, threatening settlements and farmland. The Taklamakan Desert, famously nicknamed the Sea of Death, also expanded its dunes into once fertile margins. The Chinese government recognized the urgency of the problem in the late 1970s. By 1978, leaders unveiled a reforestation initiative known as the 3 North Shelter Forest Program, also called the Gray-Green Wall. Influenced by smaller-scale afforestation projects worldwide, policymakers envisioned a vast belt of trees stretching across multiple provinces. The ultimate goal was straightforward: stabilize the shifting sands and protect towns and cities from devastating sandstorms. At the time, many experts questioned whether such a massive tree-planting venture could succeed in regions known for harsh climates and minimal rainfall. Yet the commitment was unwavering. Public and private entities joined forces, marshaling thousands of volunteers and professionals to begin planting tree saplings. Early phases faced difficulties due to low survival rates, harsh winters, and limited irrigation infrastructure. Nevertheless, each obstacle provided lessons, and by the 1990s, tree survival rates had begun to improve. From 1978 until the mid-2000s, the 3 North Shelter Forest Program expanded steadily. According to government reports, around 193,000 square miles of land had been afforested by 2009. The program set a long-term horizon, with a target completion date of 2050, indicating the nation's emphasis on persistence and sustained effort. Data released in 2022 suggests a remarkable milestone. The Gobi Desert, once growing by an estimated 3,800 square miles annually in the 1980s, has begun to contract. Researchers calculate it is now shrinking by about 770 square miles per year, a shift often attributed to tree planting, irrigation management, and better land use regulations. Concurrently, the frequency of sandstorms has shown a measurable decrease, offering relief to regions within China as well as neighboring countries like Mongolia, North Korea, and South Korea. Local communities played a crucial role in these successes. Countless individual citizens, motivated by the prospect of safeguarding their homes, took part in planting and maintaining saplings. In one well-publicized example, a couple in Inner Mongolia reportedly spent 4 decades planting 74,000 acres of trees. Their dedication symbolizes a grassroots approach where ordinary people contribute to a monumental national objective. While the Gobi captures much of the media attention, the Taklamakan Desert is equally significant, covering roughly 130,000 square miles. It is China's largest shifting sand desert. Desertification here was so extreme that farmers regularly witnessed dunes advancing onto cultivated plots and roads. In response, authorities launched the Green Belt Project, an extension of the Great Green Wall principle, designed to surround the Taklamakan with a vegetative buffer. This undertaking resulted in a 1,890-mile-long belt circling the desert. Planners introduced hardy plant species such as desert poplars, red willows, and drought-resistant shrubs capable of anchoring the soil. Implementation stretched across 4 decades, concluding major phases in 2022. By that point, approximately 1,715 miles of the belt had been established, with an additional 177 miles left to finish. Local economies benefited as some species planted in the green belt carried agricultural or medicinal value, creating new revenue streams. However, maintaining these desert forests remains challenging, with irrigation systems and continuous monitoring essential to ensuring survival rates. China's leadership also prioritized building infrastructure in previously unreachable desert regions. This serves multiple functions, supporting natural resource extraction, improving transport efficiency, and connecting isolated communities. In the Taklamakan, engineers have constructed 3 major highways across the shifting sands. The oldest, completed in 1995, was primarily intended for oil field development but quickly opened to the public. 2 additional highways followed in the ensuing years to meet growing travel and logistics needs. Each road presented formidable hurdles, especially regarding constant sand accumulation on the pavement. To combat encroaching dunes, China established a network of small irrigation stations at 2.5-mile intervals along the roads. These stations pump water to desert plants capable of stabilizing the sand. Additionally, workers use specialized nets and fences that slow shifting dunes. According to local highway authorities, annual maintenance can involve removing millions of tons of sand to keep lanes clear. Over time, these measures have dramatically improved road safety and usability. Similar challenges arose with the Lingtuan Railway, a 439-mile track running predominantly through remote desert land. High winds and sand buildup initially caused regular disruptions. To mitigate these issues, rail officials introduced sand barriers, planted vegetation around the tracks, and set up 9 sand control centers for continuous monitoring. Within a year, an estimated 10,000 workers were mobilized and $500,000 spent on track maintenance and vegetation projects. These proactive strategies highlight China's determination to sustain functional transport networks in harsh environments. Alongside reforestation and infrastructure, China has invested in large-scale renewable energy projects in its deserts. Perhaps the most visually striking example is the solar thermal power station near Dunhuang in the Gobi Desert. Its 12,000 mirrors track the sun and reflect concentrated light onto a central tower filled with molten salt. The salt's heat generates steam that drives turbines, producing up to 100,000 kilowatts per hour, enough, by certain estimates, to power 1,100,000 watt light bulbs simultaneously. Solar thermal stations offer an advantage over standard photovoltaic arrays. The molten salt retains heat for hours after sunset, creating a more stable and continuous power supply. Official data suggests this Dunhuang plant can deliver about 390 million kilowatt hours of electricity annually, displacing fossil fuels and reducing carbon emissions. Looking ahead, the success or failure of these initiatives carries implications beyond China's borders. Nations in Africa and the Middle East, facing similar desertification, often look to China's mixed experiences for inspiration and cautionary tales. As desertification threatens roughly 13 million square miles worldwide, efforts to curb its advance could shape future dialogues on climate adaptation, food security, and biodiversity. China's response to desertification is still unfolding. The 3 North Shelter Forest Program, scheduled to run until 2050, shows that the country views its deserts as long-term, strategic concerns rather than short-term obstacles. Ongoing research into drought-resistant species, water-saving irrigation, and renewable energy may pave the way for new breakthroughs. A country once plagued by expanding deserts has proven that human determination can shape landscapes, often for the better. Yet these strides remain delicate, reliant on careful stewardship of resources and balanced economic strategies. Whether these efforts ultimately yield enduring ecological health or create further unintended consequences will hinge on the continuous refinement of technology, policy, and public engagement.